Allama al-Zamakhshari. He was a Hanafi in Furu, in his fiqh, but in Aqidah he was a Mu'tazilite, and he'll actually start books saying, Alhamdulillahi alladhi khalaqa al-Qur'an. You know, all praise to Allah who created the Qur'an. So he is very open about that. So the ulama say, take what's good for him, because he wrote many good things, and just leave what is against. And the Hanbalis, أكثر فضلاء متقدميهم أشاعرة. Most of the elect of their predecessors were Ash'aris, except those who later on joined the anthropomorphists. So where are the Maturidis gone? He mentions all of them to be Ash'aris. And the reason for that is very simple. When you're comparing in terms of ideology, are you a Mu'tazili, Khawarij, Rafidi, Khariji, Murji'i, or Ahle-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, you'll call everybody Ahle-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, whether you're Ash'ari or Maturidi, because it's essentially the same. But when you want to then make a distinguish actually which approach do you have, then you'll then split away those who had the Maturidi approach, because essentially it was through Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. So you would use Ash'aris for everybody. So there's no real distinction there. Well, but the best way to understand this, I mean, as I said, majority of Hanafis, if not all of them, are Maturidi. The majority of all of the Malikis, pretty much all of the Malikis, most of the Shafi'is are Ash'ari when you're comparing with Maturidi. Although some of the Shafi'is have come and taken some opinions of the Maturidis. For example, one of the bigger books or texts, classical text on Aqidah, on Maturidi Aqidah, is called the Aqidatul Nasafiyya. A very brief text, but one of the best and most widely used commentaries on that text is by Allama Taftazani wa Shafi'i, right? And supposedly an Ash'ari. But he propounds the Maturidi Aqaid with the Maturidi methodology in that book. And it's very widely used. So, I mean, in that sense, he must have adopted many of the Maturidi ideas, or methodology rather. Now, as I was mentioning last week, there's a quote from Allama Subki. Now, both father and son were great Shafi'i scholars. They were both well-known scholars, Taj Subki and his son. So his son says, relates from his father, that about the Aqidah Tahawiyya, that it is basically what Ash'ari believed in, what Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari believed in, what the Aqidah he propounded, that's exactly the same Aqidah, except he mentions in 3 issues. And then he did say that although out of the 13 or so issues where there's a difference between the Ash'aris and Maturidis, some of them are basically issues of expression, of interpretation, of but realistically there's no difference. And some where it's a ma'nawi ikhtilaf, which means there is a slight difference in the actual, realistically, they are such ikhtilaf which doesn't cause one to call the other kafir and to take the other group out of kufr. That's something which is not found in these 2. So what he says basically is that ثم تصفحت كتب الحنفية فوجدت جميع المسائل التي بيننا وبين الحنفية فيها خلاف 13 مسألة منها معنوي 6 مسائل والباقي لفظي. He said, I looked in the books, I perused through the books of the Hanafis. This is Subki saying, this is a Shafi'i scholar. And he said that the differences of opinion between us, which he means probably the Shafi'is, and the Hanafis, there is 13 issues where there's a difference of opinion. When he says Shafi'is and Hanafis, he actually means Maturidis and Ash'aris. He says, out of those, 10 issues are ma'nawi, and 6 ma'nawi, and the rest, which is 7 of them, are lafzi. 7 are just the way they've been expressed. Realistically, they're the same. But in 6 issues, there is a slight difference. However, وتلك الستة المعنوية لا تقتضي مخالفتهم لنا. Those six they don't necessitate them opposing us, and neither us opposing them takfiran wala tabdi'an, neither in terms of calling each other kafir or neither in calling each other innovators. So that's not, the gravity of these differences of opinion are not of that scope where you would start to call the upholder or the proponents of the other view a kafir or a bid'i or an innovator. And he said, صرح بذلك الأستاذ أبو منصور البغدادي وغيره من أئمتنا وأئمتهم. Abu Mansur al-Baghdadi and other scholars from the Hanafis as well have made this very clear, that these are not major differences that will lead to this kind of a accusation. Then he says something very great. He says, وَمِن كَلَامِ الْحَافِظ, أي الحافظ ibn Asakir, Hafiz ibn Asakir, from some of his statements, الأصحاب مع اختلافهم في بعض المسائل كلهم أجمعون على ترك تكفير بعضهم بعضا مجمعون. That the Hanafis and Shafis, or the Shafis, they have agreed on this fact, that although despite some ikhtilaf, despite some differences of opinion they have agreed overwhelmingly in consensus that there's going to be no takfir, there's going to be no kufr calling of each other. بخلاف من عداهم من سائر الطوائف وجميع الفرق, as opposed to all the other sects and groups and heretical movements, فإنهم حين اختلفت مستشنعات الأهواء والطرق كفر بعضهم بعضا. When they differ in their different aspects, then they begin to make kufr of each other. And that's not the case here. ورأى تبرئته من خالفه فرضا. And they believe that they have to exonerate themselves from what the others believe, that we don't believe that that's kufr. So basically, this gives us a great nasiha. But before I say that, Taj al-Subki finishes off by saying, قُلْتُ وَهَذَا حَقٌّ وَمَا مِثْلَ هَذِهِ الْمَسَائِلِ إِلَّا مَثَائِلْ اختلفت الأشاعرة فيها وكلهم أن حمى الحسن يناضلون وبسيفه يقاتلون أفرأيتهم يبدئ بعضهم بعضا. So he's saying that this is a very true statement, that none of them make kufr of each other, meaning the Ash'aris and Maturidis, and they're all defending the same thing, and they're using the same sword of the Ash'ari to fight, to defend the faith and to fight their opponents, right? Now, today, how we benefit from this is that anybody who you normally hear making some really far-flung accusations, especially when they talk about kufr, very easily, where many people become kafir according to them, then know that this is an issue. This is something that you have to be careful about. Whether it's calling some whether it's calling some person who's considered to be doing bid'ah kafir, or whether it's calling somebody who's on the opposing end who hates bid'ah, who calls everything bid'ah kafir, right? You have to be careful, because calling somebody kafir is something extremely difficult. It's a very, very fine, delicate issue. And if, when you call someone a kafir, the Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith that when you call someone a kafir, if your statement and your accusation doesn't hit in the right place, if the person is not kafir, it doesn't fall in the right place according to Allah, it's going to come back to you and you'll be receiving the sin of kufr. So it's very difficult. And that's why Imam Abu Hanifa was very particular about this, saying that if there was a way to interpret whatever the person said, then try to interpret it and try to save him from kufr rather than give the fatwa of kufr. So do not open factories of kufr. And you get that from both sides. You get that from all sides. People calling these people kafir and these people calling these people kafir. The middle path is that you stay in the middle. And you stay away from these heresies. Yes, it could be, yes, it's not to say that people don't do bid'ah. It's not to say that people don't go too extreme in other ways. Yes, there are these problems. But to freely use the word kufr for people who pray towards the same qibla, and to freely use it for those people who consider themselves Muslims and act like Muslims, but they just have different issues, it's difficult. That's why I've really tried to look where we talk about the Mu'tazilites, where we talk about the Khawarij, where we talk about the Murji'ites. I've tried to find where people have actually, straightforward ulama have called them kafir. It's very difficult. They hardly do that. But what they do is they say that whoever holds these beliefs are kafir. Right? Whoever believes in this is a kafir. But they won't say in general that all Murji'ites are kafir, or all Khawarij are kafir, all Mu'tazilites are kafir, or all the Rawafid are kafir, or all the so and so are kafir. You hardly see them, you hear them saying that. So, because each individual, even though he's maybe considered a part of a group, he may be just default born in that group and born in that household. And if you really put forward to him those aqa'id of their so-called superiors, they'll say, what are you talking about? I don't believe that. No, but that's what you're considered. But I don't know about this. It's just, he's jahil, he's ignorant.